I genuinely hadn't expected it. My mind had imagined cold hard metal labs and a layout similar to the chunks of stables I'd seen in Red Eye's scrapyards. Instead, the inside was warm, full of rich wood textures, and more open than I might have ever expected. Above us lay a polished wooden carving bearing 3 butterflies in a glittering pattern, their patterns lit with glittering gems. Clearly, Equestria's medical research had enjoyed their comforts in the hidden workplaces. I saw offshoot corridors, stairs to a higher open plain level, and several secured rooms. The furniture was soft and bright red, faded perhaps, but the soft leather had looked comfortable all the same. Dozens of ghouls wandered around, both mares and bucks. I saw 2 of them sharing a tender moment of an embrace nearby. They were all speaking a language I could not understand. Zebra, I guessed, although I wondered how they had learned that. Traders stood by their tables. A teacher was explaining how to repair a spark generator to 3 others. This was a full community. The only real off-putting elements were the tribal markings everywhere in white and black paint, and the dead plants that languished as unclean piles near the corners. Only that made this seem anything other than a perfectly peaceful little ghoul home. Given how lonely I normally was, I could appreciate the comfort of it. And yet, the way these ghouls interacted unsettled me. They had wide eyes, their rotted mouths almost held in forced grins at times. Some looked around as though hearing things even I didn't. Occasionally, one would seem to chant something in a strange language. Trotting past those strange individuals, I could easily feel that this place was just as irradiated as everywhere else. My Radex was beginning to wear off. I could feel my windpipe beginning to itch. How long had it been? 25 minutes? We had to settle this now. If I could gallop the whole way, perhaps I'd be fine.
Tell me, little one, why do you desire the relics?
The ghoul advanced beside me, a good few feet ahead of the others that formed a protective barrier around Brimstone. I wasn't sure for which side. It seemed this leader had taken me as the speaker for us here due to my tainted lung infection. We have a friend. She is dying.
My condolences. What of?
Radiation poisoning. Every ghoul in the vicinity paused. There was a moment of silence before a delighted and sick cheering went up from every ghoul I could hear. Wincing, I fell to the ground and desperately covered my ears.
Bless your friend's soul, for she is blessed to travel down the path without even requiring our aid. This is a wondrous event.
It took 14 guards to restrain Brimstone. Snarling, biting, and bucking, he was eventually pulled to the ground in his efforts to kill the leader. 4 of the ghouls were injured in the process before they finally got a good grip through numbers. After a gun butt to his injured hoof, the big stallion growled in pain and shook his mane out, his eyes fixed unrelentingly on the ghoul. I mentally pleaded with him to remain still. I didn't want to see him hurt. I wanted to protest it, but the moment I did, that all-too-hated feeling returned, that convulsing cough that signaled that my radiation poisoning was beginning to grow. My airway was rougher, beginning to burn.
You show good signs yourself. This is what they told us would happen. The world would light, and then we would take Philadelphia for their gift. Come, little one. We should be away from this place. Allow me to show you what we truly aspire to.
One second, please. The ghoul nodded gently as I cantered back to Brimstone. Kneeling down beside his head, I spoke quietly to him, hoping that none of the ghouls watching him from a few feet away with weapons would hear. I think I can do something here. I'm the little sneaky thief, remember? Look, you're injured. Please, let me do this for you, Brimstone. Give me some space here. Let me help Glimmerlight. The big raider almost got me to run scared from his glare, but eventually he nodded.
Just scream if you need me to kick things off. But in 10 minutes I'm going regardless. She can't wait.
I'll try. Look, take the potion. I know it's for me, but you need it. Brimstone looked almost confused for a second, shocked as I drew it from my saddlebag and passed it over. Eventually, taking it closer to him with a scornful look of being helped, he shook his head.
Why do you care?
I just do. I'd want some pony to do it for me. He looked about ready to say something, but thought better of it, and looked away. Rising to my hooves, I struggled to comprehend the responsibility I'd just given myself. I'd wanted a chance to prove to myself that I wasn't just going to always hide and run away. Greater fears would eat at me in many places, but in this moment, I had to take the chance that perhaps things could go right for once.
My name is Magister Hardcare, little one. Yours is Murk. We heard you coming in to lay our prepared defense. Did you not think we would have detection grids? Now, what I am to show you is our home and our most sacred place in preparation for my question to you.
He wasn't lying. Home truly was the word. We passed through corridors that showed sleeping areas, living rooms with musty old cushions for sitting on and chatting, or various workshops turning scrap into useful tools. It wasn't large, perhaps 50 ghouls according to Heartcare. I guessed it was from his old medical profession. But it felt oddly safe and secure. I quite envied them. For a ghoul, this truly was somewhere to be, provided you had some crazed cult belief anyway. I still questioned how that had come about. I'd never heard of such a thing, and they kept talking as though they'd been turned to it. Heartcare carried on, before waving into one of the rooms. It looked like a converted supply cupboard.
This is our weapons armory, as we were instructed to keep. You are lucky I saw you for what you are, a potential convert blessed by radiation. Someday these will be the tools to bring about the revolution in the name of the striped blessing.
I was taken into a cramped old room with a single workbench in the middle surrounded by a few rows of stuffed shelves. I saw firearms of all shapes and sizes, including a few, oh gosh, battle saddles! The Magister seemed to chuckle in amusement as I hopped to and fro, handling and looking at them all. That was it! Sign me up! They had ones that could fit 4 small guns, 2 big guns, and even ones for big single-barrel artillery. All the handles, the gears. Oh, they were amazing. I wanted to try them on. I'd have to draw myself in one later.
I see you enjoy our stocks, Murk. We have learned over the many years what kinds to keep and which to throw away. For example...
He floated his magical energy pistol out, checking the battery slot as he did so. I watched the little release slide cause the housing to retract and expose the internals alongside the battery itself that acted as, I presumed, a magazine for shots. Pleased that it was still holding charge from the shot earlier, he closed the slide. Surprisingly, he drifted it near me. Staring at it, I noticed him nod for me to take the pistol.
Do feel the weight, Murk. Understand we care for our things. Of course, I also wish to show that I trust you to not do harm. I want to know you as one of my people. That is the first step to any companionship, is it not? Trust. We were told to seek more.
I wouldn't really know. I'd never been able to fully trust any pony. I reached forward, biting the grip in my mouth, and immediately overcompensating. The energy pistol was light, not just without much weight, but almost like a feather. Twisting my head about, I quickly understood both how well made this weapon was to my rather basic knowledge, and how awkward mouth-held guns really were. Heartcare moved around the armory, turning away from me to tidy up one of the benches while tutting at its idly dumped cleaning kit and several flat discs that I recognized as explosives. I let the pistol drop into my hooves and turned it over a few times, playing around with it.
I do so try to have them keep it organized, and these mines should have been put away hours ago. This is also where we keep the minor elements of heretical material. For all their harmful traits to us, the unblessed medical liquid makes a good lubricant for our tools, if properly prepared.
He pointed a hoof at a locked glass cabinet. I recognized the clear liquid sachets from a couple in Weathervane's lab. Anti-radiation water... gel... stuff. I winced as I saw the keypad lock. So much for stealing a key this time.
Merc, I realize I am dodging around the issues here. There is your future to show. Please, follow me.
I didn't particularly feel like hearing much talk right now. After hoofing over the pistol again, I felt my chest clench badly before I began to walk. This was taking too long. Too much chit-chat and nicety that was letting the radiation slowly build up. Soon I'd be feeling... My thoughts died that moment as I felt my entire body quake. Oh no. The coughing took a full 20 seconds to subside. I almost blacked out from the pain in my lungs as I felt a metallic tang in my mouth. Blood. I must have fallen against the desk. Dozens of various colored mines had collapsed all around me. Shaking and feeling tears drip from my face at the sheer pain, I clenched my teeth and got up. I wanted to run away. I wanted to just abandon all this. But then, what would I be left with? The guilt and lack of self-confidence all over again. I had to press on. I had to. I had to prove to Brimstone that I wanted to save her too. Show him I was worthwhile to have around and build trust. Heartcare had moved on to await me catching up. Good. With a cheeky slip in the saddlebag, I added a little insurance to my presence here, before pushing on after him. Even if things turned out fine, it'd do well to keep me in good stead with Barb. A temple. This place had a temple. Were the doctors of old highly religious? Was it for ponies who were being treated in this odd underground place? Had it been built over 200 years by insane ponies? Whatever the reason, it was here. And it was, well, strange. White, smooth, and polished rock raised up high to a pitch-dark ceiling. Recognizing the colors and shapes embossed on them, I lowered my head respectfully as I looked in the entrance before offering a small prayer to Celestia and Luna for my deliverance. However, the architecture wasn't what drew my eyes. Inside there were several small pods, like large eggs, each one about big enough to fit a pony inside it. They were hooked up to what looked like some sort of radiator that was half embedded in the shell of each pod. All were connected to one generator at the back. No two of them were the same, like they'd been built from parts found in the crater and then painted to look majestic. However, all of the ghouls present reacted to my sudden and somewhat revealing gasp as my eyes spotted my objective. The silver sphere sat to one side of the room on a pedestal. All I had to do was grab it. The Magister nodded to the two guards and turned to me.
Merc, here you see our nexus of worship. We like to remind ourselves of the past and of those that told us how to live all this time to carry out what they wanted. These incubators are the basis of our purity. Furthermore, to centralize ourselves, we have kept the heretical silver orb you referred to within this room. Its presence is to remind us of the dangers the blessing faces from those who seek to stop us, to stop the final victory. Now I must leave you briefly. There are matters that need attending to decide whether to offer this to your companion as well. I shall return momentarily. Feel free to look around. However, there are some restrictions, as I am sure you must understand. Any guards will instruct you on the particulars.
Inky what's? Throwing the question away, I nodded, beginning to feel a little bit more at ease with all this. The slave in me was happy to follow instructions, especially if they helped the more free part of my mind do what it wanted to. Watching the ghoul sweep away in his fancy robes, I immediately turned to the shrine they had built. The two guards stood unmoving. Wait, were they Pegasi? They were! I could see the rotted wings drooped at their sides. These ghouls, they didn't care for it. A part of me almost broke down. Here was a place that truly didn't care, and it was one place I could never settle in. Their environment would kill me within the hour. I could feel my limbs beginning to shake and my skin itch already. I couldn't wait around. Time to go in there and see about snatching that orb. I trotted forward, only to find those rotten ghoul wings snapping into a cross before me. Their voices cut in across one another.
Halt! You may enter, But know this, the unconverted within may not leave.
I leapt back, staggering on my hooves before realizing they weren't attacking me. Suppressing the urge to let my envy of movable wings get the better of me, I trotted back up. I nodded to them. Fine, I wouldn't bring whoever was in there they considered to be unconverted or whatever back out. I wasn't interfering with their prisoners. I was only interested in the sphere. The wings descended as I trotted through, hearing my hooves making sharper taps on the marble flooring. This place was so clean. I'd never seen anything so smooth in my life. My eyes fell upon the curious doorway at the back. It was enormous. Some sort of powered industrial seal that took up most of the wall. In fact, perhaps this room wasn't so beautiful after all. Freaky pods, a stored megaspell, and a strange door under the guard of ghoul pegasi? Something was amiss. I desperately wanted to take my rat away, but I had a horrible feeling the ghouls wouldn't appreciate it in their more sacred place. No, something was definitely not right here. I found it the moment I looked into one of the pods and saw her. A little filly. She lay in a small curled-up ball, crying quietly into her front hooves. Barely more than 6 or 7 years old. A ghoul. I almost screamed at the thought. A foal? She was just a foal? Did the balefire have no mercy? Even as my hooves clunked on the clear glass of the incubator to look in, I saw her stir and turn while I found the urge to break down on the spot.
No, I don't want to stay here. I want to go home.
Her voice was corrupted. What once would have been a high-pitched and cute voice was just like any other ghoul, only so much more tiny and tragic. I couldn't help it as I felt my eyes become wet. Her tiny hooves hopped up onto the inside of the glass opposite mine as she saw I wasn't one of them.
You...
I tried to form the words.
Can you take me home? I want to go home.
Suddenly, it all made sense. Protégé had been hunting for a filly of red eyes that had gone missing. The ghouls claimed radiation was their purifying blessing. They had talked of converting those with the gift. Then the last piece of the puzzle. These pods. My blood ran cold. I backed away from the pod slowly as I saw the ghoul filly tapping on the glass, her remaining hair from her mane flopping to and fro. They were making ponies into ghouls! They had made Starshine Mel. Oh, goddesses, no. My mind ran amok. I wanted to throw up. To corrupt healthy ponies into this. How many of them had been forced through this? How many had simply been killed by whatever these pods did? There was too much wrong here. Children didn't deserve such horror. If Red Eye and I shared one thing, it was this. Starshine Melody?
That's me! That's me! Please, mister, I want to go home.
The last line was wailed at a high pitch that rasped and broke in equal measures. The filly was being traumatized by her own speech changing as much as her body having been ruined. I had to get her out of here. I'll try, Melody. I have a friend. He'll get you out, okay? Just, please don't cry. It'll be fine. Protégé, you know him? He's looking too. Don't cry. Yeah, that advice was just fantastic coming from me. Her eyes lit up at the mention of Protégé. Was he known to the foals? I cast my eyes around for anything to help. That silver sphere still sat there, while I could hear strange noises from behind the barrier. I'd heard them before, behind the oaken door in Weathervane's home. Feral ghoul ponies. Lots of feral ghoul ponies. For a second, I didn't understand, before it became obvious. The ghouls here were capturing them, or putting the ones they'd turned into a containment room for use in their eventual war. How many ghouls did they have locked away in there, ready to surge across Red Eye's operations from within? This entire thing was messed up and confusing as to what had driven ponies to act like this. They were forcibly contaminating, killing, and degrading ponies into these things. I had to tell Protégé, if they got loose, then so many slaves could die.
Little Merc, I see you have met our latest convert and accepted our offer yourself.
I swerved to face the Magister. He stood resplendent in his robes, flanked by the 2 guards as they marched in. I trotted toward them. I needed to get to Brimstone Blitz, but stopped as I realized they weren't just standing in the entrance. They were blocking it. What have you done to her? My question was not as confident as it sounded beside the anguish I felt at the foal's life being ruined by these fanatics. I felt my voice break as I tried to articulate it all into voice.
She has been saved, joining our...
She's just a fool! I've seen enough. I want out. I need to talk to my...
Did the guards not tell you, Merc? You may enter, but the unconverted may not leave.
But she's there. She's not... I paused mid-sentence as the reality began to dawn. They hadn't meant just her. They meant in general. They meant me too. I panicked, galloping suddenly to try and rush past them. The 2 guards, driven by Pegasi agility to match my own, were not taxed to grab me and wrestle me back in with little effort.
Oh, I am sorry, Merc, if you did not realize. But you must see this as the best solution. You hate Red Eye, that much I can see. The bringer of the past shall fall to us, and you shall help. Bless you, Merc, for we grant you a rare gift not seen in aeons since the Great Fire.
He raised his hooves in the air as he reared back before looking down at me.
Slumber in the incubator, Merc. Immortality awaits.
I don't want it. I just want to see Brimstone. Heartcare smirked before nodding the guards forward.
You imply you have a choice. Bless this poor pony, children. He will see the truth eventually.
The guards lashed forward, grabbing my hooves and torso. I struggled against their foul, sickly bodies, screaming and thrashing as best I could. Slowly, inexorably, I was pulled into the pod opposite Starshine Melodies. I could see her wailing and hammering on the glass. Despite my best efforts, the guards stuffed me in. There was only one other thing I could do. I took a deep breath. Brimstone, help! The cry ended in a spluttered cough as I was bundled in and the pod shut while I was incapacitated. Blood sprayed over my hooves from my mouth as I struggled to breathe.
Bless him. Purge the corruption from this poor child's body. In the name of the great zebra stripes, we commend him to purity.
The pod activated as I saw the 3 ghouls bobbing their heads, chanting and screaming verses in zebra tongue. A low-pitched whirring gave way to a pulsating hum, and the air became warm. The radiator-like machine beside me in the pod began to glow. A sickly, incandescent lime green quickly filled my vision. The throbbing of the pressure was making my head hurt. I thrashed around, kicking up the pillows and covers for more willing participants as my hooves battered the tough glass. My pitbuck suddenly wailed with a horrible mess of static as something in it reacted to the overwhelming levels of radiation, like a whirring, clicking, and squealing all combined. The screen was trying to flash something. My entire body was warming up as I felt my inner chest cavity swelling, burning, convulsing. I couldn't see! The green had filled my vision and imprinted on my eyes that I couldn't even see the outside. Only the cacophony of their chanting resounded in my head as the machine worked up a gear, and I began to feel my very flesh burning. Vision swam as I collapsed. No, becoming a ghoul. I didn't want it. I didn't want it. It would just make me a slave for all eternity. A A fate worse than my own even now. One last, desperate idea formed, and I reached into my saddlebag for the mine I'd hidden in there. I heard the Magister scream something as he saw it from outside. Briefly, I worried if this would just kill me, but matters were too desperate. Better dead than enslaved. I slid the safety catch away and hoofed the pressure plate before jamming it into the radiator machine thing. I curled up with my back to it, pulling the sheets and pillow inside around me for what good they would do. At least I'd stop them from using this ever again. I was a little disappointed when it didn't explode. I was very surprised when every single machine in the area started exploding instead. The mine hadn't blown up. Instead, it had whined and sent a blue arcing magical spark that enveloped the entire pod and gave me a shock that was more uncomfortable than truly painful, making my mane stand on end. A whine from the machines grew louder until the generator the pod was attached to detonated with a sharp bang, sending shrapnel flying off my pod all around the room. The green glow died away as the power died and deactivated the lock. Taking the small chance, I put my shaky and weakened strength into pushing it off. The Magister and guards were down, staggering around with wounds from flying machinery when I dropped to the ground, my vision swimming. Cables sparkled around the floor, and pods popped their lids with their generators discharging green magical energy in savage arcs. The mine had to have been some sort of anti-machine one, a happenstance I was enormously thankful for, or I'd likely have been diced within that pod. My body was weak. All the flesh on one side of my body felt singed and tingly, while my throat was swollen and half wheezing on every breath. Even as I staggered up, I felt my stomach churn before throwing up next to the pod. Oh, that was a lot of blood. Pulling my goggles on against the smoke, I looked for Starshine Melody. Almost falling from hoof to hoof, I dragged out my Radaway and set the sachet to my mouth, before almost tripping rather than trotting toward the next pod.
Stars!
I coughed again, spraying Radaway over the dead machine. No! I couldn't waste any! Desperately hoofing the packet, I tried to rescue as much as I could while looking around.
Starshine! Where are you?
The little filly was terrified, curling up near the edge and wailing in that raspy little ghoul voice.
Come on! We're going home!
Her wet little eyes were quivering as she stopped and looked at me.
Are we? Yes! Hop on my back! Quickly!
It wasn't fast enough. The guard was on me. He was badly wounded, but managed to shove me over with sheer weight and howl in my face before trying to restrain me. I felt a hoof slap the side of my head once, twice. The third I felt being pulled back, before ceasing as the guard fell sideways from Starshine leaping onto his head and biting his ear. Brave filly! She'd bought me a second, but what could I do? I had no weapon. Oh wait! Yes, I did! I reached below my stomach, grabbed it from my stash pocket, and with a sharp swing, swiped the metal ruler across the face of the ghoul. With the sharp slap of impact, he cried out in agony, going down as it left a searing mark across both eyes and snout. I felt elated and powerful. Never underestimate the metal ruler! At least I knew he could regenerate. No guilt from this one.
Quickly, Starshine! Hop up!
I knelt down, trying to ignore my stomach clenching to cough as she clambered up. Feeling her hooves around my neck, I was very glad for the high neckline I'd sewn into it, as I saw her wasted-away skin. Staggering over, I grabbed the silver spell sphere, slid it into my saddlebag, and tried to find my way to the exit in all the machinery's dying smoke plumes. My entire body was failing, but I'd survived! I'd even knocked over a guard and was rescuing a foal! Was this what it was like to be a hero like Little Pip?
Watch out!
Starshine's warning turned to a scream as I felt some pony grabbing her, trying to pull her off me. The Magister had found us and was howling as he yanked at the poor kid.
You will not take my child. She is ours. They told me I needed to do this.
I was weak. I was a coward. But I did not appreciate foals being harmed. Stopping all resistance, I hopped backwards, raised my right back hoof, and shot it directly under the Magister to impact that little sweet spot that any pony could do harm to, no matter how weak they were. As it turned out, Ghouls made very strange sounds when bucked in the happy sack. I felt him writhe and fall off Starshine before I kept moving for the door. Almost there. Almost there. My energy was running low. I wasn't built for fighting. I stopped as a blaring alarm sounded in the room, causing me to stagger when my whirling senses were further impaired. The noise was so loud it threw off the balance from my ears. I heard a shuddering clank behind me, and the great door began to rise. Its locking mechanism pinged and detached, its own powered seal breaking from the mine.
Get him! Get him, my purest of converts! He seeks to take her from us!
A dozen green glowing eyes and organs illuminated from within began staring at me, more and more adding on the further the door rose. With throaty roars they began to lurch forward, too many for me to quickly count. Foals, bucks, mares, every one of them a feral nightmare.
Oh, fudge.
I found Brimstone in the main corridor, smacking a ghoul so hard into the wall that they just seemed to crumble. Clearly he had found and raided the armory, for I saw multiple bent weapons all across the ground and a sack of anti-radiation fluid across his back. Great! Just great!
Merk, who's the filly?
I didn't even stop. Racing by him, I just kept going. Run, Brim!
The sphere?
I've got it! Just run!
You've got it?
I just screamed over my shoulder as I worked my little hooves as fast as they could go toward the exit.
Brim, just run!
Brimstone snorted before turning and seeing what was following me. His eyes went wide.
Oh, fuck.
We burst from the hidden doorway at top speed. The moment I hit the looser earth, my speed slowed from the extra weight of Starshine on my back. She was still squealing at the howling of the ghouls behind us, making me wince every time she screamed in my ears. I felt myself go down, tripping on the loose earth until Brimstone threw her on his back instead. I could swear her scream was more at him. Pandemonium broke loose the moment the ghouls emerged, exploding forth like a tide of rotting zombie flesh and galloping with uncanny ease across the dusty crater base. They quickly drew attention. Slaves cried out, panic broke loose, and every pony in the immediate area fled in all directions. Those wooden shoes were good for balance, but terrible to gallop in. All around us, I heard screams and shouts to the slavers on the wall for aid. Blood-curdling howls roared into the sky as the ghouls fell upon such a cluster of weak ponies. Streaming through the ruined carcasses of a few buildings, I saw slaves being run down by the horde as they fell to the ground. Agonized wails as they were bloodily ripped apart set my heart to clamp. Or perhaps that was the radiation doing that. Every step now, I could feel my lungs complaining. My vision was darkening. I couldn't fall now. Not now. Above us I could hear screams for the guns on the smaller wall. Slavers were running to and fro, spotting ghouls rush. I saw griffins dive from above. Somewhere nearby, a slaver actually in the pit itself was trying to direct slaves toward a gate. The voice was familiar. Was that Protégé? I wasn't given the time to think as a zombie spotted me. Its glowing eyes seethed as it brayed and galloped for me. Screaming in return, I hopped on top of a wooden plank amongst the scrap, using it to give me purchase. I heard it thrashing in the earth, kicking up dirt in all directions as it plowed toward me. Gunfire was whizzing to all sides across the gap between juts of burned rock, cutting down ghouls and even slaves who were just in the wrong place. I saw the wounded ghouls still pulling themselves to the now lame, injured slaves. Without a thought, I galloped for that gap and dove aside as a burst of gunfire slapped with a dull noise into the earth, kicking up little plumes in my wake. Maybe some pony would shoot it. Maybe. Brimstone had disappeared. Please, someone shoot it! The ghoul leapt, hooves extended as I cried out. With a horrific rip of flesh, it landed on me, hooves scrambling at my body as blood splashed all over me. It fell limp. I didn't feel any new pain. The blood was coming from its neck stump. A sniper's bullet had blown it clean off. Above me, I saw a griffin throw me an obscene gesture. It was Regini! Some of the cult had stormed outside, Fire was exchanged with the griffins above as zebra war cries emitted mixed with staccato gunfire. Regini swerved in the air, gliding off behind buildings as I heard that voice again. It was Protégé! I could see him through the gaps, leading guards down into the crater itself to form a cordon against the oncoming horde. There must have been dozens of Heartcare's ghouls swarming up now. I saw him directing the guards with gestures of his hoof as his revolver slapped rounds at the oncoming cult and forced them into cover. Amongst the shattered ruin of the crater, a confusing, brutal, and terrible firefight was mixed in with a desperate and unarmed rush of ponies escaping howling ferals. Yet Protégé cried out, directing the slavers to cut down those attacking groups of slaves, while waving above him. The griffins, led by Regini, responded. They flew overhead at speed, landing atop a cage of rebar behind the cultists themselves, flanking and pouring fire into them. I wanted to run to Protégé, benefit from his clear orders to help every pony get out of here in one piece, but everything was too chaotic. Ghouls were now mixed in with slaves fighting for their lives around me, while griffins weaved through buildings, dropping grenades on large concentrations of the horrors. The kick of the explosives blew earth across everything. Bewildered, sick, dizzy, and tired, I found myself lost amidst it all. I ran. I needed to find somewhere safe, to get out of the crater. But my hooves were like lead, slowing me down and becoming clumsy. Even taking a second to sit on some wood for a breath and safety led to the entire thing cracking beneath me and plunging me down the slope once again. The noise was absolute. Nothing standing out but for the screams of the slaves caught and torn up. Beside me I saw a dead... It wasn't dead. The ghoul had been blown in half by the grenades, but continued crawling toward me, its distended tongue lolling out to the side. Unearthly noises hemorrhaged from its throat as it pulled itself after the ever-slowing escape I made. I tried to throw rocks. It didn't care. I swiped my ruler at it, and it just got covered in icky goo before having to roll to dodge it. It just didn't care! Brimstone's hoof made it care. After wiping the mucus from his hoof on the now sand-like dirt, he cast his head around.
Hope you appreciate it, Squirt. Just happened to be in my way.
I nodded before screaming. I saw a magically flung rock crack off Brimstone's forehead. Stunned, the raider staggered before turning to the new threat. Through all the dust and swirling battle, I saw the Magister advance on us, his magical energy weapon pointed directly at Brimstone.
You two ruined everything. You desecrated our most blessed artifacts. Now you draw us early into the fire of battle.
He wasn't joking. Battle. That word felt right as I saw a griffin land on the ground from an injured wing and immediately grapple with a ghoul. She was forced down until, amazingly, a slave of all ponies smashed it over the head with an iron pipe. I could hear Protégé nearby, the loud report of his revolver distinct from every other source of gunfire going on. The Magister was wounded. A bullet, probably from a griffin, had lodged messily in his side. All the same, his eyes were locked on Brimstone as the immediate threat. Even the big raider couldn't cross this distance, and Protégé was still far off. The pistol pointed at me quickly too as I squeaked in terror.
The zebras gave us this world. Those below, they told us. Why do you deny it?
Brimstone snarled and made to charge as the pistol jerked his way again, making him stall. I could see the frustration on his face.
Now you'll die. You will never see the world they told me I had to make, Murk. Not as long as you live. I offered you immortality. As for you, Raider, you killed my children. You destroyed our homes in your rampage. But you constantly make one mistake. Allow me to teach you a lesson.
Brimstone lowered his head, growling.
And what is that rot?
Never bring hooves to a gunfight.
With a smirk, the Magister aimed at his head and pulled the trigger. It clicked. The silence lasted only a second before the Magister registered the misfire. Panic set in on his face as he pulled the trigger again, and again. Through my fading consciousness, I couldn't resist a smirk as I reached into my saddlebag and drew his spark battery between my teeth, grinning as widely as I could around it. And you should never let a thief hold your gun. The so very satisfying look of surprise on his face lasted only long enough for abject horror to set in when Brimstone grinned and stomped the ground with both hooves, ready for a brawl. The big raider actually grinned at me.
Nice work, kid. So rot. What was that about a fight you wanted?
To his credit, the Magister didn't even hesitate before fleeing immediately. Roaring and chasing him for only a few feet, Brimstone made sure he was gone. Starshine had fallen from his back, standing beside me.
Thank you, mister.
My vision swam. In the aftermath of the confrontation, I felt reality slam home. This wasn't good. The coughing began. I felt blood curdle in my gut, lungs, and throat. No, I was so close. I'd won. I couldn't. Not now. But it wouldn't stop. I couldn't breathe. I tried to move, but the loose earth didn't even let me drag my hooves correctly as my balance fell from under me. I fell to my knees, feeling Starshine shaking me with her little hooves and shouting off to the side. Through hazy vision, I staggered and convulsed, only briefly seeing Brimstone running back to me.
Merrick?
I didn't reply. I couldn't open my eyes. I could feel blood spraying from my mouth. I threw up. I couldn't take air. Oh, goddesses. I collapsed, unable to breathe at all, oxygen deprived. I felt myself going into shock as I spasmed with the failed effort to take in air. Only a vague, muddy sense of hearing even heard Starshine scream as she shook me, or Brimstone bellowing.
Merrick!
Something shook me before I just went numb and let it overcome me as my lungs burned up and clogged. I finally gave up as the radiation finally won out.
Merrick!
I dreamed. Or I thought I did. I could barely move. My limbs were heavy and felt restricted, like I was locked in a cloying blanket. What could I see? Nothing. I could see nothing but a small light. Wait, that was something. Nothing made sense. What way was up? My head hurt, as I felt like I was drowning. My hooves reached out but found no purchase. But they did. I felt some pony grab hold and pull me, and I saw the shape of some pony pulling me along. Wait, I was going forward. Was I running? What was I running to? Or from? It was all too hazy, like running through liquid. I felt myself being pulled as a bright flare lit her. Was it a her? Was that little Pip? I fell as we separated. I fell upward through water. Even as I broke the surface, I woke. My everything ached.
Well, finally you're back with us.
The raspy voice caused me to twitch and spasm, to throw myself around as the bed's blanket caught and twisted with me.
Fucking calm it. Hold still.
Oh, swearing. Weather vane, not heart care. The ghoul was looking over me in a somewhat musty bed. This was the hospital, but not his own little area. No, this was one of the wards I had seen. I tried to look, but the motion made my lungs twist and stomach heave.
Careful,
he muttered as I threw up into a convenient bucket. It was strangely orange. Had I just been drowned in Rataway?
You're lucky to be alive, you crazy little bloody idiot. You'll be fine in a few hours, once the medication has time to work. Magic is handy like that. But you may take a little while to feel quite 100%. Your temperature has gone down by about 1/5 of the way to normal since that rat fever. Yeah, lucky. Fucking lucky.
How did I get here? The medical ghoul looked a little surprised before chortling.
Didn't you realize? Brimstone brought you here.
Brimstone?
Oh, yes. Galloped the whole way with both you and that fool on his back. Broke down the doors to the hospital. Gave the guard a concussion. Sought me out and promptly declared that if I didn't save your life, and I quote, right fucking now, he would do something. That something he mentioned, I can assure you as a medical expert, is quite anatomically impossible. However, I got the feeling he was about to try anyway.
Brimstone did that? For me? But...
He didn't tell me what it was you did to change his view, but I did hear him saying something about what she would want him to do. Oh, and by the way, he told me if I informed you it was him, he'd crush my skull, so don't tell him, all right? Or I'll find a way to give you every fucking injection I can think of in your rump. Besides, there's some pony else who wants to see you.
He trotted off after tapping a rat away to my chest. Wait! Weathervane! The rat purge did... Weathervane didn't answer. Instead, the newcomer did as he trotted in to my shock. Glimmerlight is, last I heard, recovering, said Protege calmly, trotting amiably into the ward and pausing in the entrance. Brimstone apparently left for her the moment he dropped you here. Rather literally, so I am told. I squeaked. My master was here. I wasn't in my cell. Ow! Oh no. Protege held up a hoof to quiet me. Now, I'm not even going to pretend I'm not disappointed that you felt you had to escape me, Murk. I like to think I am a kind pony. As such, I was prepared to punish you as befits how I run things. I dislike workers attempting to escape me to escape their duty to Equestria. He trotted closer to my bed, magic fixing the blankets over me to not be as messed up. An odd move while talking of punishment. But it seems I am inclined to drop it and not even ask how you got out. I know my own building, so I am sure I can guess how. I trust it will not happen again. But no, my punishment is stayed only by that you have inadvertently done me a great service, Murk. We turned back the tide, but you saved one of Master Red-Eye's foals. Starshine Melody has been returned to him. Master Red-Eye was quite delighted, if saddened by her condition. I nodded, trying not to allow a relieved smile on my face, that Melody had in her own obtuse way saved me from Protege. Is she all right, Master? It is sad to say the condition is, as we all know, non-reversible. She will not grow properly. However, Master Red-Eye is kind. He has still granted her a home under him. Melody will be safe. As for the ghouls, those who did not charge out were exterminated. My jaw dropped. Wait, all of them? But there was... A small army, yes. Master Red-Eye sent his alicorns on a personal mission. The deterrent is now clear for all to see. The foals are off limits to harm, and any who dare do so will not go without vengeance for their assault upon the children of the New World. They or their leader shall not be harming any pony else, Murk. I guess that's good. Protege nodded slowly, patting the bed, taking off his eyepiece for a moment. Yes, Murk, I am told you went to great risk, so I feel that I owe you thanks. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found her down there. While the fact that you did so goes against every rule I have, I am also grateful for you helping save Glimmerlight. She is a good worker, a good pony, and my own efforts to requisition the rad purge had failed. He smiled at me, leading me to feel an odd surge of pride that my master was genuinely pleased at my efforts. It made everything feel worth it, and... No, that wasn't right. I didn't do it for him. I did it for those on my side. Part of me liked Protege's appreciation more than it should, but it still felt like a betrayal of my freedom. It would take me a little time to properly kill off that part of my mind, but for now, yes, I could still do it. Now rest up, Murk. I will see you returned tonight. Then you must rest more. Forgive me, Master, but why? Protege turned and trotted off, turning his head. Your first day of work under me, of course. We have an objective. On the hills outside Philadelphia. We found one. I felt my body clench up as it ached terribly. Fear made me tremble. You mean, you found a... Yes, Murk. We found a stable.
Footnote, perk attained. Sleight of hoof, rank 1. Every pony better be careful what they have near you, for even those items they love the most may mysteriously disappear after that hoof shake they gave you. You may now attempt to steal, even while detected.